Well, we're picking up a show that we did sometime back.
Yes, a little while ago.
I'm waiting for parts for the Connie locomotive. In the meantime, I thought, well, let's do something different.
Let's stay busy.
And we said a while back that we were going to build these Model T kits, or at least one of these Model T kits from Northwest Miniatures.
Wow.
John Thacker. And he sent us these, and I said, in the future, we would actually build one of these.
Right.
Well, welcome to the future.
There it is.
Now, if you go to Northwest Miniatures Etsy store, you'll find that what they generally make are actually O-scale interior parts.
Oh, wow.
Furniture and such as that. And it's really neat. And you won't currently find the Model T on here.
Oh.
Because it's currently out of stock. He's making some more and he's changing it slightly. But what you will find are all of these fun things.
Well, that looks like fun.
Because putting interior parts into structures is half the fun.
Oh, exactly.
Or more than half the fun. And they also do some figures.
Right.
But probably what they're best known for is this Model T kit, which just unfortunately right now is between versions.
Oh.
And there's these new versions that are about to come out. So I'm really looking forward to that.
No kidding.
So this is the one that I'm working on, and what I decided to do is just keep it as a frame.
I don't blame you.
It's just such a neat frame, and I like the car bodies and everything, but then you cover up all of these amazing details. Look at the details on that engine.
I cannot believe the detail.
It's hard to imagine that that's O-scale. It's just teeny tiny, but the details are just amazing, and this is one of the newer variations.
Oh, cool.
That he's going to be coming out with. This is for a farm tractor, and it also has a 1920s, an earlier radiator shell on there.
Nice.
Now the one that he has been making, and the one that we're building here, is this one.
Oh.
And it comes with this coupe body and a truck bed and that particular radiator shell and a couple of different body options that you can get. But he's really expanding that. What I would like to see him add is this firewall.
Oh, exactly.
Because if you're doing a frame like we're doing, it would be nice to be able to have a separate firewall that you could mount on there.
Right.
Normally, the firewall is part of the body kit. Anyway, let's pick up where we left off with the show a while back, and then we will pick up where I said, let's build the kit, because we didn't build the kit back then.
No.
Well, it's Tuesday, and we've got something really fun here.
Oh, yes.
Somebody that we ran into on the internet, John Thacker.
Oh.
And he's making Model Ts.
Oh, how fun.
In O-scale.
Really?
And he said he was going to send us some. And they just arrived.
Oh,
so
neat.
Here they are.
Oh, cool.
So let's see just exactly what he has sent us. Pacific Northwest Miniatures, John Thacker.
Oh, nice.
So I'm assuming that if you can search for that, and we'll put a link in the description so you can find it. And then what I'd like to do is follow up on this and actually build these little suckers.
Right.
Wouldn't that be fun? Because
that'd
they
be
look
nice.
like they're gonna. Well, first of all, a Model T.
Right.
It's one of my favorite cars of all time. And I'm sure if we could time travel back to, 1912 or something, and say to people, the Model T is one of, they'd say, are you nuts? That's the biggest piece of junk. They were never intended to be anything special. They were intended to be a way to get around for cheap.
Right.
$350 and you're driving down the road. Anyway, I just think they're really the neatest cars.
Oh, that's cool.
So these look really nice.
A mini kit.
A mini kit. Well, they're O-scale, and that doesn't mean that they're not really detailed.
Right.
There we are. So what he's done, this says body kit only, and this one says body kit only, and then this is the main frame of the car.
Oh, really?
T-Series starter set, 1/48 scale. So if you want to build the entire car, I guess you're going to need
Scissors.
So, which is not that different than the actual Model T. The Model T, in an effort to be the every person's car, there was just a frame car, something struck you as funny.
I thought you was going to say cut it out.
Oh. No, that's your line. Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Oh, look at this.
That is really neat.
Wow, that's put together neat as a pin in there.
Wow.
Oh, my.
So it's all 3D printed. You can tell from the
Oh,
little
my goodness.
trees and the way it all goes.
Goodness. Oh, wow.
There's 2 steering wheels there.
I see 4. Or am I looking?
Oh, you're right. There's 4
steering wheels. There
There's
you
a
go.
whole bunch of. Okay, so let's start the assembly process. These are the various bits and pieces that come with the kit. It's actually 2 different kits. It's the frame and the body separately. And this is how you build the frame. The frame builds up, well, it's tricky because it's teeny. Beyond that, it's actually a fairly simple build, but you're going to need a few things. First off, you need, well, what John recommends is to use 2-part 5-minute epoxy.
Right.
And I don't like using 2-part 5-minute epoxy just because you mix up a little tiny batch, you put on a couple of glue joints, and then you got to mix up another batch because that one's gone bad. And I would much rather use thick CA glue plus a kicker.
Right.
But you have to use a thick glue. If you get anywhere near this thing with thin CA, you'll glue the whole thing to the assembly jig and ruin the whole thing. It's got to be a thick glue, but I found it real easy to work with by using the thick CA and a kicker. Now, as you know, the best way to apply glue is with a toothpick.
Yes.
So just rather than try to get the nozzle down in by your model and squirt glue all over the place, build up a little puddle on a paper plate, go in with a sharp toothpick, and put a little daub of glue right where you need it.
I've even gone so far to use a sewing needle, but use the eye to pick up the glue.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right.
That's clever. Now, I found I needed to use magnifying glasses, a little head-mounted. This is so tiny.
Yeah, you need a jeweler's loop and tweezers.
Absolutely. So the head-mounted magnifying glasses, and I used the one with the light on there.
Exactly.
Now, at our age, you definitely need magnification.
Right.
But even somebody who's 18 years old would probably not be able to see what they're doing without magnifying glasses. Now, you're going to need a decent pair of wire nippers, little wire cutters, and wire bending pliers.
Right.
Needle nose pliers, but preferably 2 pair, a square needle nose plier and a round shank needle nose pliers for bending smooth curvatures. Now, you're also going to need some fine needle files.
Finer the better.
We have so many files. You have your set and I have mine.
Yes.
Because we can't share because we're both using them at the same time all the time.
Exactly, all the time.
They're the most used tools in the whole shop. So
Right.
you need some fine files to clear up these 3D prints. Now, I think you need an airbrush to paint this with.
I would think so.
If you hit this with a rattle can, it's just going to disappear. The details are so tiny. You have to have the very, very thinnest layer of paint on here so as to not cover up your details.
Well, I could see it disappearing the minute you hit it with a paint spray. Woo, there
Absolutely.
it goes. Yeah,
So
it's that small.
You've got to use an airbrush. And I used Mr. Color Paint,
Oh,
which is the same as the Tamiya lacquer. It's a lacquer paint. And the reason I thought this was important, if you try to put an acrylic over this, you're going to have to put down a primer first. If you put down a primer, again, you're going to destroy all of the details under the primer. Mr. Color Paint will go down in a thin, thin layer right over the top of these 3D prints, and all the details still be visible.
awesome.
Now, whenever you're doing really fine, complicated, frustrating work, you need to have some relaxing music.
That definitely helps.
I would suggest something by 50 Cent. Okay, perhaps more likely the sound of whales. Something that chill modern music, something, Brahms, anything to keep your nerves from getting jangled, or you will end up just getting really frustrated.
Right. Choose your own favorite music.
Favorite music, because it will be frustrating. And I would suggest aromatherapy too.
That too. Yes, lavender.
Lavender is good. Now, this whole project would not be possible were it not for this assembly jig. you will actually build the framework over this, and that will hold everything in alignment and square. If you tried to just freelance this thing, you'd get nowhere.
Ah.
Now the jig also includes this cutting guide for doing all of your various wires, and you can see the finest wire here is all the way down to 10 thousandths.
Holy cow.
So it's like a little metallic human hair that you're going to be
cat
working
whisker.
with. A cat whisker.
A cat whisker.
This end is the brake lever and steering column, and I would suggest not cutting those until you've built the frame. Everything else I would suggest cutting before you start, because you'll want to have it standing by. Now, figuring out which wires are which, I used my micrometer because they're all very similar in size.
Right.
And the difference between 15 thousandths and 10 thousandths just isn't that much.
Well, and when you're measuring wire, I get confused anyway.
Absolutely. I don't think you need micrometers, but it helps.
Yes.
Now, like a newt, I decided to cut the rods with the car in place. I didn't cut them first, and you can see that adds complexity to the problem.
It certainly does.
So just go ahead and cut them first.
Yes. Make sure you keep those in some kind of a dish, because we were chasing them around on a carpeted floor.
And then because they're so similar in size, figuring out which one was which was a bit of a challenge too.
Right, and I did discover a cat whisker, so in the process.
Yeah, and that wasn't the wire.
No.
Now this is the most complicated part, bending the steering rod and especially the brake rod. So you have to bend those outside of the jig and just use the jig to check alignment and make sure you're getting the angles right. And this is where having a pair of needle nose pliers to make those sharp angle bends on the steering rod. They're not 90-degree bends, you can see, and it has to fit down in there, and then you can use your nippers and come in and cut it to length.
Oh, how handy.
So it's really neat to have this. Again, I don't know how you'd build it without.
Right.
Now the more complicated bend is the brake rod, and you're really going to need a pair of round nose pliers like this, because you've got to bend into there a perfect semicircle and then fit that to the jig. And it's easily done if you have a round pair of pliers. There's the bend right there that you need to create.
Oh my gosh.
So it goes over and then back. So you have to bend it in two directions with your round nose pliers. And keeping in mind too that wire is about 15 thousandths. And then you can check the alignment by setting it in the jig here. Now I made a stupid mistake. I should have bent these down along the side here. There's supposed to be a 90-degree bend here, and I knew that, but I thought that would be more easily done once it's mounted on the frame.
Uh-oh.
No.
Not even.
That was a major problem. Should have just followed the instructions and bent it on the jig. So now the actual assembly, it's really neat, because you just set all of these pieces down in here and they're held in perfect alignment, and all you have to do is come back and get a little teeny tiny glob of glue down in the appropriate joint without actually gluing anything to the jig. Now I made a mistake here.
Uh-oh.
And unfortunately, I didn't catch that mistake. But you see these little knobs here?
Yes.
I thought that those were going to be body alignment. No, those are motor mounts, and they face down exactly like they're doing here. And then because I tend to overthink things, I thought, no, that's an alignment thing for the body, and I turned them over and faced them up.
Uh-oh.
And it was an easy fix, or a fairly easy fix, and since I'm building it as a frame, it really didn't matter anyway. But this picture is correct. They're supposed to face down, which is actually up, because we're working upside down.
Yeah, the greasy side down.
Greasy side, yeah. Up is down and down is up.
Ay, ay, ay.
So you can see here, as I'm gluing it together, I've flipped the frame rails left for right, making those tabs face upward, which seemed to make sense to me, but this is backwards.
Oh, no.
This is not how it should have been done, and this is how I actually glued it together. It's like this. Oops.
Oops.
Now, again, you have to be very, very careful at this stage to not glue the model to the assembly jig. And that's really easily done because there's all of these alignment pegs facing up. And right back here, that glue joint is right up against these alignment pegs.
Oh, man.
And so these two joints are really tricky. You've got to get down in there with your glue and make sure you've glued the frame to the rear end without gluing the frame or the rear end to the alignment pins. Okay, and now we're ready to put the rear wheels on. And they just, you have to clear out the hole a little bit with your file, but for the most part, those are just going to mount right to that rear axle. And the jig holds them in perfect alignment, and so they're pretty easy to do.
Oh, good.
Okay, at this point we need to snip off a couple of these just microscopic parts. You can see by my hand there just how tiny these parts are.
Oh, my.
But there's 6 front end spindles here because you need 2 of them and you're going to lose 4 of them. So
At least.
So he's giving you 6. There's parts here for 2 complete frames, but you'll notice there's 6 of these, and we need to carefully snip out and clean off 2 of those and then glue those into the front wheel.
Goodness.
And then once those are glued into the front wheel, then the spindle can be mounted onto the front axle. Now, in gluing the front wheels on, the jig does not hold them in perfect alignment so that you can turn them if you want.
I see.
And I thought it would be fun to have them just slightly turned over to one side. And so that makes it a little trickier gluing these in because you can actually rotate them and put them in at an angle.
Oh.
And now we're ready to start putting in our brass wires. Now, this is the drive line. That's the first one you put in. And it also occurred to me that it would have gone a little easier had I put that in conjunction with the motor and the rear axle when that assembly was going together. Because you want to stick one end in the engine and one end in the rear end. And you can do that easier if those things aren't already glued in place.
I see.
And the next thing we need to put on are the rear radius rods
I see.
that hold the rear end. On a real Model T, they would keep the rear end from getting twisted off the frame. And so those just drop right on top of the alignment pins, really easily done, even though they're tiny. And then we put on the front steering rod that ties the 2 front wheels together for normal steering. And now that really complicated little brake rod. And here again, I wish I'd have put the 90-degree bends in. I thought to put them in now when it's glued to the frame so that I could get the bends exactly where I want them here at the corners. But I ended up breaking it loose trying to do it and redoing it and moving it. I should have just bent the 90-degree angles in there in the first place.
Right.
And now with the 90-degree bend properly in there, I can add the 2 brake pull rods that run from that 90-degree wire all the way to the rear axle on both sides of the car.
Neat.
And now the tailpipe. That's the last piece of wire you put in is the exhaust pipe.
Oh, cool.
And there's the frame. Now at this point I went ahead and mounted the radiator. You probably wouldn't do that if you were going to be putting the body on here, but since I'm not, I want to have the radiator and I also want to have the fuel tank. But I thought I'd just check to see how the body aligns, and that's where I realized those pins poking up are going to create a problem.
Oh, I can see now.
You see what's happening, and there's no way to trim those off. And so I thought, well, where the running boards go on, it's holding the running board in the wrong place, as you can see. So I just carved that out.
Right.
And that would have worked. But then I thought, I don't want to cover up all this detail. I'm just going to build this thing as a frame.
Yes, that's just neat. I love the detail.
And so I'll use the fenders somewhere else.
Right.
And so here it is with Mr. Color Gloss Black. Just a really, really thin coating on there so I don't bury all the details. And then I came back with flat, clear, and put that over the tires so that they're not glossy. Now, just to be absurd, I thought I'd take this car and set it on the road crossing on our model railroad.
It looks like it's about to be devoured by the coupler.
But now you really get a sense of how tiny, microscopic this little car is compared to what we normally do.
Right, it's a tidbit.
It's a tidbit. It's not much larger than a Hot Wheels car.
No!
This is the railroad that it actually goes on. This is the ON30 module that Steve built. But it looks right at home on there.
It sure does.
What beautiful detail and just what a magnificent little model this thing is.
Oh, it's wonderful.
And because it's just a frame, rather than having it parked up here in the street, it's going to be downstairs in the machine shop.
Ah, they're working on it.
They're working on it. And I'm thinking of doing a whole little automotive repair shop down here.
Right.
Because there's a little bit of open floor space. But I tried setting it into some various locations down here. And boy, doesn't it look right at home.
It sure does.
You just need to get it in something that's its scale.
Right.
But it reveals how just finely detailed this thing really is once you get it in a proper environment. Well, the parts have arrived for the Connie locomotives.
Oh, they sure have.
So I guess back to that. My current addition to the Silverton Northern locomotive is the brake air tank.
Right.
And that will probably be next week's show or the show after that or something like that. But that's what I'm back working on. And then some other projects too.
Oh, look at that.
So we'll be covering some of these projects. And then you've been building another coffee shop.
Yeah, if you can't eat it, then make it.
I like your box of Kleenexes.
Yes.
But this second coffee shop is turning out even better than the first one.
Oh, practice makes perfect, I guess, or makes you lose your mind.
Makes you lose your mind. Well, if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. It helps us out and it helps you out because if you click the notification bell, then you can be notified of these shows when they go up. And the easy way to become a subscriber is with the blue button. Right there, the blue button. Well, we're not sure how you found this video on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring. And we will see you here next Sunday with something fun on a Sunday show. Bye-bye.
Bye.